Hi, my name's Jen Petrie, and welcome to the Power of Energy Masterclass. Please say hi, let me know where you're joining me from. And if this is your first time here, welcome, let me know. Please feel free to comment and share as we go through this masterclass. There are going to be lots of gems. It is a free masterclass, but there's going to be gems and things to integrate along the way. So please feel free if there's someone that pops into your mind and you think, oh, they would get a lot out of this, please feel free to share that and feel free to post any comments you do in the comments. If you're coming back and listening to the replay, give me a hashtag energy and I'll know that you've been here and you've been watching and listening along. So, why am I talking about the power of energy? So, today we're going to talk about why it's important, and we're going to talk about everything is energy. It's the foundation of life. And then we're going to go into another second module, which is going to be a bit more on the integration of it. So, I brought this masterclass together as a free masterclass because I talk about energy in everything I do, all the work I do in different ways. And it's something that once people see it or can understand it from a different perspective, it changes everything. And we go from trying to find ways around and through things to there is an access to go from here to there. But first of all, we have to understand like, why is it important? Like you say everything is energy, but what does that really mean? And how can we adapt and use this to our benefit? So this is where we're going to go and this is what we're going to talk about. So it is the foundation of life, energy, right? You're either alive or you're dead, and that's based on the energy that you have. Then we've got things that are tangible, right? Your energy, I'm energy, the chair is energy, the tree is energy. And then we've also got things that are intangible. And, 200 years ago, that would have been much harder for people to sort of understand. Today, we've got things like electricity where we can't see it, but we know it's there. Most of us have got phones that we connect to Wi-Fi. And again, we can't see the Wi-Fi, we can't see the information, but we know that there's energy there, right? So it's all around us. It's part of existing in life. But how do we adapt it and how do we work with it for what's going on? So when we start looking at the elements and we break down different pieces, we can look at energy in a number of different ways. There's elements about energy that are internal to us in particular, right? We feel emotions and we feel different things in our body, and that's energy. It's energy moving for what's going on. And we're aware of energy outside, and we can see it, we can feel it, we can touch it. But we're also aware of how that impacts us. So we may go somewhere or we may be impacted by the energy. So it encompasses so much of life, and it is the very foundation of life itself. So when we look at it on that level and we look at how simple it is, whether it's a pen, whether it's you, it's me, it's the pet that you've got, it is so integral into what's there. And it provides a basis for things that are alive or that are dead or in the process of dying. We look at something like a flower and we can smell the aroma of it, right? A really beautiful flower. You go, oh, I can smell that. And then that stays alive for a period of time after we've cut the flowers, right? There's a time of existence, but there's energy to it. And we see that when we have it initially, it's full of life. And then as the time goes on, it's if we look at something like a piece of fruit, it's a bit the same. We go, oh, the fruit's full of energy. And then over time, that deteriorates and eventually it becomes dead and it goes back into the earth and it recycles through in terms of energy. So we then can look at energy in different types of matter. So water is a really good example because we have a solid, we have a liquid, and then we have a gas, and they're all different levels of energy. They're different types of energy in terms of what there is and what is around and what we can use them for, adapt them for. If you've got a water bottle and you've ever tried to get water in, you pour it in and it goes in very easily. But if you've got that in an ice form and you've got a certain size of top to your water bottle, it's very hard to get it in. So all of a sudden it becomes this, oh, okay, the way energy shows up in different ways can impact its ability and what it can do, but it's all energy, right? Once that physical ice softens and it shifts its form of energy, then it transforms into something that is more pliable and something that you can quite easily get into your water container and do what it is that you need to do with it, right? So it's very interesting when we start looking at this. There is then when we look at, and anyone that's done any base level sort of junior science at high school is probably aware of this. There's then a spectrum that we've got that goes from X-ray to UV. And on that spectrum, there are things that we can see, like colors, and there's things that we can't see. You know, there's color spectrum beyond that. We can't see a physical X-ray, right? We have a machine that takes that and then we can see what that is. There are people that at different stages of consciousness can see into these things. I can't currently do that, but there are people that can see elements of this, right? The UV, it's the same thing with the UV. We can't physically see at the moment the UV light, but it is something that we are aware is there, where we see the impact of that on our bodies. It's the same with our phones. If we've got Wi-Fi, all that information isn't in our phone, but we see the impact of it when we search something. We go, well, I wonder what this is, and it goes boop, and we've got the information there. So we can download that information. So on this spectrum, which goes from X-ray to UV, there's also emotions. And I think we've all noticed how different emotions make us feel. And do you notice that that energy feels different? So if you feel happy and joy, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting, that feels different to, I feel really sad. Oh, it's not good or bad, it's just different energy. The same thing happens with colors. And you see different colors. There's a whole color therapy. People use different colors for different reasons, but we know when we tap into it how it makes us feel. And that's why people will pick different colors to feel different ways. If you want to feel sad, you might pick a particular color. If you want to feel happy and bright, you're probably going to go for a bright color, probably yellow, right? There's things that influence us and impact us in different ways. So when we look at emotions, they fit on this spectrum and this scale as well. And David Hawkins created a map of consciousness, and it ranks the emotions from 0 to 1,000, and 200 on this scale is neutral. So when you get to 300, that's hope. And that offsets in terms of energy because it's like a balance and a harmony, right? And it doesn't have to be 50-50 or even, but it's this kind of melding of what's going on. So it offsets 90,000 people that are vibrating below 200. It's an energy, right? It's got to balance out in terms of what's there. It helps lift and raise it. And if you've got one person that is solid at the vibration of 500, which is love, that offsets 750,000 people below 200. So it's quite amazing when we look at the impact that energy has and how it can shift and change and how there is an equilibrium that wants to happen and wants to exist. Now, the kicker is there's only 15% of people at the moment that are 200 or above. 15%. That's not a lot. And I would take this, I hadn't thought about this before, but I would absolutely believe that it's true. This also will apply to living beings, right? Whether they're animals, whether they're plants, whether they're sea creatures, this will all play a part in terms of what's happening. So if this is what happens, how do things, oh, I've got an ant on me. How do we go about then in terms of energy and how it impacts us? Because essentially we're like magnets, right? Have you ever met someone and you're like, oh, yep, this works? Or you're friends with people for a while and then you're like, something's shifting and I'm in a different space. It's because we're like attracts like, right? So we energetically attract what's there. If we're searching for something, that's what will turn up. So we have this space where one, like attracts like, and two, things will go where they feel better, right? If you walk into a room and there's a group of people and you're like, oh, I'm not sure about that energy over there, or oh, that's got a good energy, where will you go? You'll probably go to where there's a good energy. If we think about water that dilutes, right, it will go to where there is more space so that it can dissolve some of the denseness that it has and spread out and have more space so that as a whole, it feels more balanced. and more comfortable in terms of what's there. So when we look at this, we are aware then that we are putting this out and this is what we're attracting, but we can also influence it and shift what's there. And in terms of being like a lighthouse, this is what manifestation is when people talk about it. I'm not going to dive into that today, but that is what people are talking about, right? You're manifesting something, you're putting the energy and the intention out, and it's coming back and meeting you. There are a number of reasons that it will turn out the way that it does based on your beliefs and how they're impacting the energy and a range of different things. So, what else is energy? Well, energy is music. Have you ever listened to music and thought, oh, yes, that's a happy song? Or maybe you're in a situation where you're like, do you know what? I feel really angry or I feel really sad and I just need to fully feel this emotion. And you'll go and put music on that feels like that. But what you're feeling is the energy and the vibration that comes through it. There's a lot of information around these days about sound therapy, right? Music is therapy. So there's color therapy. There's so many different ways that this impacts us, right? I've spoken a bit about Wi-Fi and how that impacts us. And then we look out in nature and there's animals, there's vegetation, there's the elements, right? The sun, you can feel that energy on us. And there's also things like landscapes. Whether you've walked into a room that's got people in it, or whether you've walked into a space energetically outside somewhere, I'm sure most people have walked into a space and thought, oh, this feels really good, or what's just going on here? I'm not sure, but I can feel it in terms of what's there. So we look at energy, and everything's energy. You're probably starting to get a bit of an idea about why I say everything is energy and that it's the foundation of life. So then we start looking at things. There's some experiments that people like Emoto have done, and Veda Austin is doing this as well with water. She's diving slightly deeper, where they take water crystals and they've taken water with different intentions or from different places and they've frozen it. And when they've taken it out, they've photographed it. And we can see, depending on what it is, the formation of the crystals. So with Emoto's work, when he had love and he had peace, it was just the most beautifully formed crystals. And when it was something that was like death, it just looked like a sludge, nothing formed. And Veda's work is a bit the same. When she photographs something, or when she puts an intention to it and captures an image of it, what is captured in the frozen water is something that is quite majestic if it is a really beautiful thing. And if it's not, then again, we see that, and that comes through the energy of the water in terms of what we see. When we look at something like plants, they've done experiments with plants where they don't want our consciousness to impact it because we're aware that that can happen, right? Particularly with something like water. The idea of Emoto's work certainly was that we are mostly made up of water. So our thoughts impact who we are. Again, it's all energy. And with the plants, they've done experiments where they've set up cameras so they can watch what happens. They've very intentionally gone out of the space so that they're not impacting the plants. And when they've thought about one of the experiments was they thought about dropping a boiling water onto the leaf of this plant. And before they had even dropped the boiling water onto the leaf, and this was all set up remotely, so they're a couple of 100 kilometers away. When they've dropped this on, the plant, before the water has even dropped, has reacted, and they've seen the spike in the energy that they've got, the energy monitor they've got connected to the plant. So they've seen that before it's even happened. Right? How does the plant know? Well, there's an energy and a consciousness to the plant. We can all see when plants are living, right? We can see that when a plant is healthy, it's got a lot of energy. When a plant starts looking like it's dying, it's like a people or an animal that's dying, right? You start to see the decrease in the energy that is there. So energy and consciousness are connected, and they have a massive impact in terms of what we're doing. So when we apply energy to anything, it boosts it, right? And it either boosts it or detracts it. You think about a balloon. If we breathe energy or life or air into the balloon, it gets bigger. And when we let it out, it deflates. It's a really great basic example for us of what is energy and what energy can do. So if it's the foundation of life, you think about, when a baby is born, the first thing they do is they breathe air in. It's full of energy and life. You see children, most small children have got a lot of energy. It's quite joyful. It's a good energy. And as people get older, they have life experiences and there's more energy that we feed us or fuel ourselves with along the way. But then as people get to the end of their lives, the energy starts to decrease. But this applies to absolutely everything. Everything. This is how ideas grow and evolve and are created. Because if we have ideas, someone has to put the energy and the thought, which is again energy, into it for that to create and manifest in a physical way. So it's really interesting once we start tying all of this together and we look at how big and how far this actually goes. And when we start looking at it from certain perspectives, it changes the choices that we make. And it helps us, I would suggest, to make better choices, but at least they're more informed choices because of the way that we look at it. And essentially, this is what we can do to hack into different things and have them move, right? So we look at things like food. Most people have eaten food and gone, oh, I really don't feel good after that. Or people have eaten something and been like, oh my gosh, I feel great. That was so good. Sometimes you can eat a piece if you've had a really great piece of fruit and you will take a bite into it and be like, oh, I can feel the energy. It just feels so good. One thing I have done in the past a couple of times is water fasting for 30 days or more. I'm not going to dive into that now as a conversation. And please don't do that without some guidance because there are certain levels and it is very powerful. But when I did it the first time when I came off, one of the things I had was coconut water and I had taken a sip, and before I had even swallowed it, I could feel the energy that was about this far out of my hand and it just popped out. I'd just gone straight through me. So there is so much power to this energy and where we get it from. I think most people, even if they feel like they're having a bad day, if they go and stand out in the sun, they feel better, right? We're being fueled with energy. Again, music is another thing that fuels us. We go, oh, yes, okay, I'm loving this. Quite often you'll hear sports teams, right? And they will have their anthem that they use. And when they hear that, it builds the energy because there's a significance and a meaning to it. And so that builds and creates that. That's why people go to, I was going to say the concerts or to the opera and they'll hear music because it takes them on a journey. And that's what we're doing. There's so many different ways we can hack into our energy. And again, if there's something we can feel in us that's not right, we can shift it. If you feel like, oh, I'm not sure how I'm feeling today, you hear good music, you're like, oh, okay, I'm over here. If you hear bad music, like, oh, okay, I'm down here. But we can influence and impact that. So the other thing that we can impact things with is love. And a really great example of that is if you see, hopefully not people, but people is an example, or animals, right? And where they're given love, they flourish because it's an energy. And when they're not, they're isolated again, there's an energy and that starts to detract. So when we can connect to energy, we soar. We literally take things to a whole new level and we can adapt this into every area of life. Every area of life. And I certainly don't teach on every area of life, but there are ways that things impact. And I bring a lot of this into my work. And I'll talk a little bit more about different areas and how things can impact this in the next module. But even things like telepathy. And for some people, I'll be like, oh, yes, I understand that. And some people are going, well, I don't know, like, is that even real? Well, have you ever thought of someone and the phone's rung or you've got a text from them or you think of a song and then the next thing it's playing on the radio or an ad on TV and then it comes on, you're like, oh, I was just thinking about that or that tune was just in my head. It's very easy for us to dismiss these things and think, oh, it was like that was coincidence. Well, maybe it is, but it's still energy, right? If you want to think something's coincidence, you can believe that. But I would say it's actually intentional. It's connecting. And when we start to acknowledge this and pay more attention, it's like we've got in the brain, we've got neural pathways and we build and we strengthen them. So rather than thinking of these things as, oh, that's a coincidence, when we start to notice that this is actually us And this is actually us connecting to energy more and understanding it more. When we build that muscle, that information starts flowing more. You can learn anything from scratch, right? We all started off at some point learning from school, learning to read. And it's something that as we've gone along, it's gotten easier because we've learned. You go to the gym, you watch athletes. They start out like all of us, they can't walk. And then they're in the Olympics, right? Because they've built that muscle and it gets easier and easier for them. This is the same. It's tapping into it, learning how to apply it to whatever it is that you do, and then you can go and soar. First of all, we need to sort it out within ourselves, and then we can take it to others. Because once we understand what we're doing within us and how to adapt and apply that, that becomes a really strong foundation. And then we can take that out to others, and others are like, oh my gosh, how do I get this light? How am I attracted to this? I want what you've got. You know, if I turned up, a really good example is if I turned up to get onto this masterclass and I was like, hi, like, welcome along, and I hope you can hear me, and I hope this is all right. And I want to talk to you about something today. It's a different space, right? To me being here and connecting with you. And I don't have to be like, oh my gosh, hi, I'm so pleased that you're here. And I don't have to be over the top with the energy either. I just have to turn up grounded and truthful in my energy. And when I bring that, that's what you're attracted to. You're like, I don't know, there's something about you or what you're saying that's landing for me. There may be things energetically in you that are shifting. That's what happens sometimes. You don't have to know and understand it all. But when we take these pieces together and we start to put them together and we understand more of it, then we understand the way we can take pieces and use them differently as well. So I hope some of this is starting to land for you. I'd love to hear some of what you're getting. Maybe you're having things that are dropping in that you're like, oh, I hadn't realized this before, but this makes sense. Ah, yes, I understand this. Maybe there's something that you think, do you know what? For some reason, felt like I had to, I've been wearing a lot of white clothing lately. I didn't like now it's starting to make sense. Sometimes there will be different reasons. It may be for some completely different reason. Maybe there's some music you're like, I feel like I've been listening to this music, or there's somewhere in nature I've got to go. It's all for a reason, right? It's all contributing to your energy and it's shifting and changing things within you because your energy. That's what happens. Just like water. You don't have to leave it for long, but you heat it up a bit and it goes from solid to liquid to gas. And then again, we change that and we shift the energy, and it can go again very easily from the vapor to liquid to ice. We're the same. So if we can do this and it applies to everything, why can't we shift and change it? And it's easy to look at things and say, well, there's things though that aren't living, right? How does that work? Well, okay, imagine you've got a wooden chair. Okay, that's a chair. You're like, yes, that's a chair. Despite the fact that it looks just like it's a wooden chair, it actually has a degree of life to it, because if the timber wasn't holding together, it would just disintegrate, right? And I have seen things that have disintegrated before, right? It just goes back to the ether. It becomes more shifts more and more into the air state before it can come back into a more physical state. So we can look at it that way, or we can say, if you really wanted to transform its state really quickly and you didn't want to wait for it to break down, if you took that timber chair and you threw it in a fire, all of a sudden it's going to go push, it's going to go up in flames. It's going to transform its energy. Yes, you might have some coal left at the end, but it's also going to shift and change its energy. And we can do that for us. So if we can do that for us, how cool. How do we tap into it? How do we more of this? Well, there's two philosophies that I have, right? One is everything is energy, and that's why I bring it through what I talk about, whether I'm coaching people, whether we're talking about different projects that people are doing, it doesn't matter. We talk about it from energy, and then we can adapt in different strategies on an energy and what to do to how to get a certain solution, right? But then there's also everything is a choice. Now, you might necessarily like the choices that you have, but it is a choice, right? And if you say, no, no, I don't have a choice, if you're here, if you've got to the point where you're listening to this, you've got a choice, okay? So it may be, someone may say, oh, do you want a green apple or red apple? You're like, well, I don't want an apple. So all of a sudden, that's not two choices. That's not, you've got a red apple and green apple. You've got three choices. You've got red apple, green apple, no apple, right? There is more choice and more energy beyond what we think. We need to tap in and trust ourselves and to trust the choices. I'm not saying right now that you have to agree with them, but just be aware that they are there. You're going to make choices that make you more comfortable or make you feel better. And sometimes we need to look at what's actually going to make me feel better in the longer term rather than the shorter term to work out what the best thing is, right? I think most people understand the concept of something like sugar. And if you go, oh, yes, I'd love that piece of chocolate, right? If that chocolate is full of sugar, you might have some of that initially and go, oh, that tastes so good. And then you have more and more because initially that's what it tastes like. That tastes better than something. But you have learned longer term, if you that's all you eat, you're going to feel pretty bad pretty quick, right? You need to have other things. And so you will have other things. And as you have them, you're like, I know I'll feel better long term. I know in the morning I'll feel better for this, right? Quite often as people age, it's a thing with alcohol for those that have alcohol. It's like, particularly when you're younger, it's like, oh yes, I can have this, it's fine. I wake up the next morning, I'm fine. And the older people get, they're like, oh, I can't do that anymore. I just wake up and I feel dreadful. And, so we can see the way this plays out in different elements. And it's about adapting this to just about anything. So that's where I'm going to leave this today, that everything is energy. You can go and dive and think about this and ponder it. What is there that has stood out for you? Where are there things that you think, oh, maybe I could adapt this? So I wonder how this would work. And in the next module, we're going to dive into everything is a choice and look at this from certain different perspectives and how we can apply this energy and take it and put it into just about anything. So I hope you've enjoyed this today. I'd love to hear what you've got, and I'll see you soon for more on the power of energy. Have a great day. Bye for now.